I'm Dr. Daniel Griffin.
And I'm Dixon DuPont.
And today we're going to be discussing dengue.
Right.
So let's start with a little bit of an introduction, the significance. It's estimated that about 400 million dengue infections occur every year.
That's incredible.
So this is huge. Some estimate more dengue infections than malaria infections. The current WHO suggestion is twice as many.
Really?
Huge.
Wow.
So dengue is a huge issue. One of the things I'll say, only about a quarter of these actually result in people being clinically ill. Right. So that drops us down to about 1 million, 100 million.
Right.
Okay. But still pretty,
100 million.
A mere 100 million.
Okay. So another vector-borne infection, it's a mosquito-borne infection, and this time instead of a protozoan, it's a virus. And there are 4 different kinds of dengue, so that's maybe why only 1 in 4 gets sick.
Maybe not.
We'll
talk about that.
Well, that's a good lead into why do you get sick from dengue.
We'll talk about that. So there are 4 popularly recognized serotypes of dengue, and a 5th, which I'll say is sort of under discussion.
Okay.
Was described a number of years back, and it's still being sorted out. And different serotypes, like dengue type 2, may be more virulent than the other dengue serotypes. But type 1, type 3, type 4, maybe type 5, we're not sure, causes illness.
Okay.
And we'll talk a little bit about the interaction with serotypes. But what is clinical disease? How does dengue present?
Well, one of the terms for it that's commonly bantered about whenever the name comes up is breakbone fever. So maybe you'll lead into that somehow.
Actually, no, that is one of the classic descriptions. And so in 2009, the WHO broke down dengue into 2 major classifications. So dengue without warning signs and dengue with warning signs. Okay. When it's presenting, it can present with fever, headache, severe bone pain, as you're the breakbone that you're describing.
Yeah.
But now there can actually be warning signs. So it's a febrile illness, person feels classic viral syndrome, but then there can be what are described as the warning signs. And so we'll go through what the warning signs are.
Sure.
And we're gonna start off with, we're actually going very quickly from clinical disease into the diagnosis, because the clinical disease and the symptoms
lead you to the
diagnosis.
Cool.
So the WHO has come up with a very helpful dengue definition.
Okay.
And they have a probable dengue and a confirmed dengue. Okay, and then we're going to talk about the dengue being into the severe or the with or without warning signs.
Okay.
So probable dengue is a febrile illness with 2 or more of the following criteria. So criteria would be headache, retroorbital or pain behind the eyes, myalgias, arthralgia, rash, hemorrhagic manifestations. That's going to get us to talk about the tourniquet test.
That's right.
Leukopenia, so these are white cells below a certain level, and serologies that are supportive but not confirmatory.
Got it.
And our confirmed dengue is going to be, we isolate the virus.
Right.
We have a greater than or equal to 4-fold rise in the IgG or IgM. So we're going to need paired sera. We're going to need sera right now when the person's sick, and we're going to need convalescent sera. A little bit of a challenge in some contexts.
I'll say.
A positive dengue virus antigen test. So there are rapid antigen tests.
Oh, that's good.
Which are great when you have access to them. If you're in a dengue endemic region, something you should think of and have in your kit.
Right.
Or a positive nucleic acid amplification test.
Right. So we already talked about one organism that causes fever that when they come in, you have to distinguish that fever from all the other fevers. This also presents with fever when you first come in. So now you're stuck with these 2 overlapping diseases, and you've got to distinguish rapidly because the treatments for each of these is quite different.
It's interesting. There isn't a lot of treatment for dengue, actually. It's almost an avoidance of certain treatments.
Okay.
And so, yes, and in a lot of areas there can be an overlap, and so that's when it's super helpful to have diagnostic tests, the ability to distinguish malaria, for instance, from dengue, or dengue from many other viral diseases.
Doesn't the fever from dengue last continuously, so that would be a distinguishing feature that would...
So as we discussed early on in malaria, they may not have reached the same periodicity.
So it's
and
not
so you may
simple.
be seeing fever.
It's not simple.
It's not simple. It's not simple. And some of the things like the dropping white cells, so we've got our blood test, might see that with malaria as well. So it's not always an easy distinction. Headache, fever, all the things that we're describing could be malaria. And I think I mentioned malaria until proven otherwise. Maybe what about dengue until proven otherwise?
Right.
Because dengue is responsible for a significant number of deaths. It's not an infection without consequence.
That's correct.
So one of the things to think about if you're in certain regions, I know there's a dengue season in Thailand, in Vietnam, where the hospital's actually overflowing with dengue cases.
Exactly.
But since it's mosquito-borne, it's going to be the same time of year potentially as your other mosquito-borne.
That's a very interesting distinction, though, right?
Right.
Because malaria is transmitted by the Anopheline mosquito only, whereas this infection is transmitted by
the other mosquitoes. And let's make a distinction about the fact that the Anopheles female mosquito is biting at night.
Yes,
The dengue mosquitoes tend to be, I love this word, crepuscular mosquitoes. They tend to bite at dawn and dusk.
That's right.
So classically, you can see this with the tiger mosquito, right? The Asian tiger mosquito.
Aedes albopictus.
And the Aedes albopictus, but also Aedes aegypti can transmit as well.
Yes.
But albopictus is probably the most efficient.
Right.
It will actually bite you in the morning, it'll bite you in the evening, not just nighttime when you might be out and about and not under your bed nets.
Right.
So this could be quite an issue that way. One of the things that we want to make sure we get to while we're talking about hemorrhagic manifestations. They used to talk about dengue and hemorrhagic dengue. And when you have severe dengue, one of the aspects associated with mortality can be bleeding manifestations. So there's a test that was sort of in vogue, out of vogue, back in vogue, called the tourniquet test.
Huh.
And this is, for a while there I was going to say it was like the string test for one of our parasitic diseases.
Right.
But so this is also called the Rumpel-Lead Capillary Fragility Test. I had to read that because that is hard to remember. But what you actually do is you take a blood pressure cuff and you measure the blood pressure. So you have systolic and diastolic. You find that midway point between the two and you inflate the cuff to the midway point and leave it on for 5 minutes.
Huh.
This is uncomfortable. People do not like this.
I can imagine.
At the end of the 5 minutes, you wait 2 minutes and you measure a square, a 1 inch by 1 inch square, and you count the number of little petechiae that you have induced. And if it's greater than 10, that would be considered a positive tourniquet test.
It's very practical.
Yeah, and it's actually quite characteristic and is considered one of the hemorrhagic manifestations in addition to gum bleeding and other things that you might see with the hemorrhagic manifestations in dengue.
Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about stages, because this will help how people present. The first stage is the febrile stage. They come in, they've got the fever, they've got the headache, they've got the associated symptoms.
Right.
They don't have the rash. The fever goes away, the next day the rash appears.
Oh.
And the rash is typically described as white islands in a sea of red. It is a classic rash, very recognizable if you've seen it.
Sure.
And you'll see it diffuse, particularly on the torso, it'll be down on the limbs, and it'll be almost a confluent red with all these little white islands.
Goodness.
But the timing, the viremia has ended, And now what you're actually starting to see is the immune response. And this is when you're starting to get into the second stage. Actually, this is the critical stage. Most people do okay during the first stage with the viremia. It's the second stage when you can see shock and hemorrhagic complications.
Interesting.
So this has actually presented a problem because people would often be admitted, and now I think we've talked, your fever has broken.
Right.
We now know it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
But with dengue, this is when you start to worry. This is when the patient may develop shock, may develop dengue with complications. And let's talk about what those complications might be and why. And early on, you brought up a number of serotypes of dengue.
Yep.
So it's your first time, healthy individual, middle of life, you got a dengue serotype 3 infection, probably going to be just fine. Now, you go to a different part of the world where they have serotype 2, and you get your second case of dengue infection.
Ordinarily, your immune system is prepared for it. Well, it might not recognize type 2.
Right, you think maybe type 2 will be a little milder.
It might cross-react enough to allow some protection, but that's not what happens, is it?
So here you have what they call an antibody-dependent cellular cytotoxicity.
Oh, right.
So those antibodies that you produce from type 3 actually augment and magnify the immune response.
Dear, dear.
Because think about when you're getting into trouble with dengue, the virus is already cleared, it's the immune response. And an over-exuberant immune response
Right.
can lead to the manifestation. So
Right.
classically, the shock or the dengue with warning signs is developing either in individuals who are getting a second infection with a different type of dengue, different serotype,
Right.
or in young children. And young children might get severe or dengue with warning signs, first infection.
So this complicates a long-term control strategy. That is the development of a vaccine. I know we don't have time for it here, but
No, actually, I think it's critical.
okay. Because if you vaccinate someone against any one of these serotypes, and they're totally immune to it, and then they encounter another serotype, you're going to get this kind of reaction, and that's exact opposite of what you want.
Yeah, so that's always been the challenge, and is the challenge. There are dengue vaccine trials going on right now.
Exactly.
And one of the concerns has always been that if you don't get protection against all the serotypes,
right,
you may end up potentially getting one of the serotypes, and that what you thought of as protection may be magnifying the immune response against that missed serotype.
Indeed. Nature. We have to deal with it.
Yeah. Now, if you survive the critical phase, then you go on to what we call phase 3 or the convalescent phase.
Okay.
And most people go on to have a full recovery.
Oh, that's good.
Some of the people who've had hemorrhagic complications may not go on to a full recovery, but that's normally the acute, so stage 1, 2, which is fever's gone, rash occurs, this is the critical stage,
right.
And then 3 when we have convalescent stage.
Right.
We talked about diagnosis, that was sort of tied up right in with our clinical presentation. But let's talk about treatment. How do we treat these people?
But you already said there's no treatment. Come on, I'm going to quote you now. There's no treatment.
That is it. So what do we tell them?
You're going to get better if you get past that second stage, which is critical.
So the big thing is don't do the wrong thing.
Right.
And the wrong thing, if you're worried about someone with potentially hemorrhagic complications, you don't want to give them anything that might interfere with platelet function.
Like
so
aspirin.
No aspirin.
That's right.
No ibuprofen.
Oh, brother.
No naproxen. No non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. No medicines that might encourage hemorrhagic complications.
Right.
Which, they've got fever. And so you need to be very careful about treating the fever with cooling towels, with mechanical means, with maybe paracetamol or acetaminophen, but avoiding anything that might cause hemorrhagic complications, because platelets will often drop quite low, below 20,000. IV fluids in severe cases, so all the supportive measures that you want to be thinking about. so worry about volume. And then it's very difficult. There are no large-scale, well-controlled therapeutic trials of any agents, and there isn't even a great, well-controlled trial that helps you determine who should and shouldn't be admitted.
Wow.
Because you think it's quite odd. They're all better. The fever's gone, the symptoms are improving,
Right.
and this is when they may end up with the complications that are life-threatening.
Dear.
So we fill our hospitals with all the febrile, miserable people who are not yet at the high-risk period.
Got it. Dear.
So it's a challenge.
Big one. A good friend of mine, Scott Halstead, spent his entire life working on dengue and worked for the Rockefeller Foundation for many, many years. And I often met him at this tropical medicine meeting that I often went to. And every time he started to talk about his favorite subject, he started to throw up his hands and said, I don't know where we're at right now. It's a very difficult thing to know, except he knows it's getting worse. And I don't think he would say anything different now than he would then.
Yeah. I mean, we've had some positive things, and I think that when we distribute our mosquito nets, because we're focused on malaria, that can have some benefits.
A little bit, yeah.
But again, the timing is an issue. And I guess the last thing to point out, so we have our dengue without warning signs, our dengue with warning signs, and then of our dengue with warning signs, we have our severe dengue.
Yeah.
And these are the people that we're worried about severe bleeding, severe plasma leak, so we have problems maintaining intravascular volume.
Exactly.
We might see our transaminases, our AST and ALT, greater than 1,000-fold. We start to see impaired consciousness, ultimately become organ failure and death. The majority of the deaths due to dengue are in children.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, thank you for joining us for our talk today about dengue, which is a tremendous problem throughout the world.
Yeah. We'll be back.